Hey folks, welcome to another episode of 5 to 15 with Musickers. I'm your host, Jason DeCristofaro, and I'm thrilled to have with us today my good friend and an amazing musician, Wendy Jones. Wendy, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wendy wears a lot of different hats. She is an arranger, composer, band leader, but today we're going to be talking, and great educator, I should add too, but today we're going to be focusing on one aspect of her long and varied career in music, which is working as a professional vocalist. And I think you've worked in just about every setting a vocalist can work in, just about. So I guess we'll kind of start where you just finished graduating from college, right? We'll start there, maybe you just finished your bachelor's, and you go out to do your first gig, and we'll kind of start our journey there. So tell us a little bit about your first gig out of college, where that was, what that was, and your experience of that.
I think my first gig out of college was a musical theater production, summer theater. That's before I got my master's, or maybe it was after I finished my master's degree, actually. So I had trained classically, and this was a big issue for me because at the time I was trained classically and I was singing correctly, whatever that means. It meant something different back then. But I debated whether or not to even take the role because it was Babe in Pajama Game and it involved a lot of belting. And I thought, do I want to sacrifice my training for that? And I thought about it for a week or so, and then I was like, yeah, I do. So and it turns out you're not really sacrificing your training. I hadn't been trained to do that. But anyway, that was my first thing. And then I started working at a theme park up in Boone, Tweetsie Railroad.
Ah, the Tweetsie.
Yeah, and then just things progressed from there.
Very cool. So you went from musical theater to theme park. You know, I think a lot of times when students, especially voice students in classical programs, train for a career in voice, they may be thinking opera or doing art song recitals or things of that nature. Theme park is probably not something that is even on their radar, but that is and I've talked to a lot of our vocalists, this becomes one of the first gigs they often get coming out of school. Is there anything specific to working as a professional vocalist in a theme park that you would recommend students prepare for? What advice would you give them for that environment?
Well, the first thing I would say is that when a teacher says that if classical is the foundation for all other types of singing, that is absolutely incorrect. And it's scientifically proven, and there's the science and data to back that up. So when I first entered theme park, I had some issues because I was trying to sing theme park, more country and such, and belt without having any of that technique. So it's imperative that you learn how to sing commercial music styles. I've been on my soapbox for that for a while. But the thing that makes theme park the hardest is you will do 5 to 7 shows a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And so it's like a little mini football game every time you're out there singing. So it's a lot of fatigue, and if you don't know how to maintain your vocal health and hygiene and sing the style correctly, you can get vocal injuries. And I do believe the data shows that vocal injuries happen to all singers across all types of art forms or singing art forms, from opera to music theater, but they're most predominant in theme park, because you have to sing so much. So if you're not ready, if you don't have the technique solid, and you don't have a good health and hygiene plan for vocal, you may suffer some issues. I had issues.
I imagine it's different for each person, but for you, in your experience, what were some things when you started to have those issues, what were some things you did to sort of prevent that and maintain just the endurance, having to do all those shows every day? What was part of your self-care routine?
Yes, once I got straightened out somewhat technique-wise, what I do now, you know, you have to, your body is your instrument. So if you don't get the right sleep, if you don't hydrate properly, if you don't eat well, and if you don't work out, do a gym, your vocal gym, you don't go and you don't work out the voice regularly, you won't have the stamina or the power.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to stay in really good shape here.
Yeah. That's a lot. And another setting that I know you've worked in where you also have that just long hours working several days in a row and you need that stamina you're talking about is a cruise ship setting.
Yeah, the cruise ship was a little bit different in that you usually would do a sail away show. So when you left port, we did like a 15-minute sail away, and then the next night you would do a full hour show. You would do 2 sets of that. Then you would have 2 days off. You would do 1, and then you would do the sail, you know, coming in when we were docking. That day we would have show, so we do 2 dinner seatings. So for me, that was in many respects easier as far as the singing, because I had breaks and I had time to rest my voice. The trouble with that was that it was very hard vocally just talking, because there's engine noise, there's the casino noise, there's all kinds of stuff. So I had issues and had to really address how I was speaking, because I would get tired just being, conversing with passengers.
Yeah.
Part of our job was, as entertainers, is to talk with people.
Yeah.
Go up to the Lido deck and, do limbo with the passengers. I was like,
wow.
okay, but talking over the band and all of that, it can be, so that's an
Yeah.
unexpected challenge when you're going to work on a cruise ship.
So I've heard this from other cruise ship musicians. You're not just there to make music. You're wearing a lot of other different hats, and you kind of have to be expected, on the drop of a dime, to do something. Like you said, like just go talk to those passengers over there.
Mm-hmm.
What were some jobs on the cruise ship that before you arrived, you weren't expecting to do that you ended up doing?
Right. Well, on the ship that I was on, we were also had a lot of cruise staff duties. So we did bridge tours, we led fitness classes, we ran the karaoke.
Wow.
The disco at night. So I would try to trade off those, because I didn't know as much of the music to play, but I would do the fitness things in the morning. Games at sea, coaching the lip sync, coaching passengers that volunteer in a lip sync routine and teaching them a little routine. And there were also lots of safety trainings behind the scenes, the survival at life at sea requirements and certifications that we had to get. So I wasn't expecting all of that, but sometimes the cruise director would say, Wendy, will you come host a dinner table with me, and your job is to chat with passengers.
What percentage of the gig would you say was actually singing music as a performer, and what percentage was all these other things you're talking about?
Well,
if you had to guess roughly.
If I had to guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of my week was spent performing.
Wow. Okay.
The rest of it was being a passenger, going to the gym, or being not being a passenger, but a
facilitator.
Yeah, exactly. So not that much. Actually.
Sounds like there should almost be a course for the cruise ship musician or something like that in schools,
Right, and sometimes I got to fill in for the cruise director, learned how to call bingo. You learn a lot of things, and they did assign me the cabaret slot, so I learned how to. That's kind of how I crossed over into jazz or got interested in it, because I was singing with a trio, and someone was writing charts. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was a good stepping stone.
That's a great segue, because that's a third setting, and that's something you still do a lot. You're very active as a jazz vocalist. So tell us a little bit about what that entails as a vocalist, in terms of maintenance, self-care, and just maybe the things even beyond singing that you need to do as a professional jazz singer.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think I've given that a lot of thought. And when I was doing theater and theme park, I felt like I had to train my voice to have a lot of stamina and a lot of power. Now, even though I was on microphone, because it's a different kind of sustained singing.
Right.
With jazz, it's very different. So yes, I do have to vocalize every day, but the percentage that I have to spend, this percentage of time I have to spend on voice building and maintenance versus the time I have to spend on ear training and listening. And I had to do that for classical music, and I had to do it for music theater, but in theater, you're listening and you learn your intro. It's always the same. Right. And then you learn the break, and those musical cues and when to come in. I still studied the score, etc.
Sure.
But now in jazz, I don't have to work as much to keep the voice up, but I've had to learn how to listen and go, that's going to sound different every single time.
Right.
So now I really had to hone in on what are the chord changes, what are those changes, what's playing, and get comfortable in the rhythm, and dive deeper into the harmony. And that's one of the things that scares me about, or did scare me at first. It scares me less, because I had been trained to rehearse things and get things down. I was on it, but this requires a different type of application or study at home.
Right.
You're studying at home so that you can make music in the moment with other people that can be pretty fabulous.
They can, and it really can. And I think one of the big things is, wink, wink,
Yeah.
I think one of the big things is piano playing. What advice would you give to singers regarding learning piano?
I think every singer needs to learn how to play piano. I had, the required piano courses in college, passed my piano proficiency, but I've always been intrigued with it, have started playing some jazz piano. I don't practice it as much as I need to, but even a minimal amount. If you are in music theater, and you can't plunk out your own part, you're going to be living in New York or some big city, and you're going to be having to pay somebody to teach you your part.
Get an accompanist every time.
So at least you can learn your own part. I can play well enough to do that. I can learn my music on my own. As far as jazz goes, I have discovered when I play the chords myself, I can improvise so much better. And it feels like I'm grounded. So I'm working right now to learn to play, because I'd like to start at least accompany myself a little bit, because I think but it definitely makes you a better improviser. And then how do you learn the relationships? How do you find the guide tones, your thirds and sevens, and you can learn to connect those? The
individual notes in the chords. And seeing it visually on the instrument.
And feeling it vibrate through your body. Like how do you really, there's something to that. And all the best scatters play piano.
It's true.
Or play piano. Sarah Vaughan and the list goes on. But
very cool. Well, so the fourth area I'd like us to talk about, and you've alluded to it here and there in our interview, is musical theater, because that's a big part of your professional resume as well. What advice would you give, especially to young people who are maybe thinking about that as an avenue as a vocalist? What advice would you give them from your years of experience in musical theater in terms of what they should prepare for?
Well, obviously you have to be a heck of a singer, and you have to familiarize yourself with the repertoire from the golden age, which a lot of modern day singers or younger singers don't want to do. I get that. And then current. So you need to have like good head registration, or more what we used to call legit. I hate that term now, but classical, more, more traditional sounding. But then you also have to be able to belt. You should be able to dance. By golly, you should be able to play the piano well enough to teach yourself, because New York pianists are expensive. They're worth it. But you also have to be willing to, you're going to get a lot of rejection. You'll get a lot more rejections than you'll get acceptances. And I have friends that have been on Broadway, major roles. I won't mention them, because then you may know who they are, and I don't want to out anybody, but they're struggling looking for work. You can star in a Broadway hit, and when that role is over, you can be asking your friend, who works at a theater, can I come work at your theater? Is there anything I can do? So you have to, that can be very fleeting. So I think having, the more diverse you can be, that was one of the best advice some of the best advice I ever got from a colleague who said, when their students, particularly when they hit like the 40s and 50s, when it can be hard to cast you because you're too old to play that ingenue, but you're not old enough to play the old person yet.
That ageism is pervasive, unfortunately.
Right, but in theater, there are certain things. I mean, if I'm supposed to play a grandma of 5 grandchildren, nobody's going to buy that yet on stage from me, even if I could have that in real life. So there is a little bit of that going on, but developing songwriting skills and or the ability to sing jazz or play jazz, then you can at least keep yourself in business. Like side hustles, if you want to use that term. I don't know.
Getting gigs, getting work while you're waiting for that next big role or that next big opportunity.
Right, and when I was doing theater, I mean, I was kind of doing some theater, and then I would do a cruise ship, and then I would do some theater, and in between, my classical voice was still up, and you can make money. In December, if you can sing Messiah solos.
There you go.
And at Easter, and then if you can, the Ave Marias and things for people's weddings, then you can. That's where the big bucks are. Weddings and some of those church gigs.
Wonderful. Wendy, thank you so much. We could talk for hours about this, but we're almost out of time here. Before we go, is there a website or a place where people can check out your music or other projects you're doing?
Yeah, I have a website. It's wendyljonesmusic.com, and it has all the information about me, my singing, my background, and all that good stuff.
Wonderful. Wendy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one, y'all.